There is something very, very particular that we need to deal with right now. Well, it's on everyone's lips. There's no question. I mean, you can actually feel that everywhere you go. And I would claim that there is no smoke without a fire. You know, if you read history back to the 1920s, the 2020s, there is a sort of a rhythm of specific changes happening in larger societies. The brain damage has already been done. So, you know, you have to change. Yes, you have to change. But the biggest question is, how does architecture change within the setup that we have today? And the other question is, architecture has a tendency of bagging things into singular elements. So right now, a lot of stuff is about CO2. I agree, very, very important, has to be solved. But that means we're forgetting a lot of the gray zones, the fringes of this. You know, what about the mother of all sustainability, social sustainability? How does that actually work? How do you maintain education, political systems? How do you move into the influencing part of society where legislations are being written? How do you deal with politics? And then you have the other side of that, the business models, the economic sustainability. How does that work in the future? So the design portion of architecture is maybe being reduced to a slightly different definition of architecture. I mean, it's been stolen by so many other professions in any case, so it doesn't really matter. But if you take that little point and say, let's expand the definition of architecture just a little bit wider, embrace the complexity that we're dealing with for the moment, and then make sure that through the different offices around the world, that we actually do pursue the designs that actually contribute exactly to these solutions. And I think that's where it's lagging for the moment. I still believe in the power of architecture, there's no question. Otherwise, I would have to change completely, right? I would have to go home and kill myself or something. But, you know, I have this discussion with a lot of students when I lecture around, that there is a kind of position of hopelessness and fear, almost amongst quite many young people. And we should basically stop talking about it, because they say, okay, doing anything is anything at all is unsustainable. You know, it's like the most sustainable thing is to do nothing. But you know, that's a catastrophe, because the most sustainable thing is for that person who says that not to be born. So in effect, we're dealing with us being located in this world and having to believe in what we're doing, and that can actually contribute to change. And then you have to walk the talk in the practices of this world and show that there is no contradiction between environmental good and sound buildings, beauty. There is no contradiction between societies and how they're built up. And then, like this Congress is about here, is about, okay, let everyone come in, leave no one behind. And that is a much more difficult issue than designing good buildings. I mean, there is a lot of talk about the global north, the global south, and of course inequalities, which is a huge part of this whole thing. And there are, of course, and has always been, in my opinion, the possibility of an exchange method, but we're always looking at from, let's call it, for a simplification, the global north, a kind of privileged position to believe that we are the smartest, the best in everything we do. So yes, of course, there is a two-way system that should happen here, which is learning from totally different situations and taking it in not only into practice, but also into education. On the other hand, there is another issue here, and that is that if you define things so narrow, you're leaving away the third path. And the third path, in my opinion, is where we should be going. And I don't know what it is, but I know it's out there somewhere. The exchange parts that we have, for instance, through the UN system that we do have now, there is no question that the consumption that we're dealing with every day, 22 degrees inside, what is the comfort levels that we should be living with in the future? The amount of planning in ice-cold regions is totally different, because you have to plan for the winter. In other parts of the world, you just pick the fruit from the trees. Everything is contextual, and it demands different type of planning, different type of environmental thinking. So what we should be really careful of not doing is putting everything into one bag and saying this is the solution. there are hundreds of solutions. I love creation. I just absolutely adore the fact to see something grow in a horizontal, established, collective, intellectual group of people where the notions of intuition, the notions of feeling, all the way into the ABC of psychology, affect behavior, cognition, and that being realized in some sort of physical representation. And that's me. I can't help that. That was my dream from the very beginning when I started building the first small cabins for myself. So I have this creator in me. And to me, the fascination is also deeply embedded in the creation. But it's the circumstances around that thinking of creation that we probably need to expand. And more and more holistic, obviously, but also really being a little bit more careful.